Before satellites, our view of Earth stopped at the horizon. We could not see the weather across oceans. We could not track planes or ships in real time. We could not speak instantly across continents, navigate with precision, or beam images from space. Communication was tied to cables, ships, and towers. And space? That was still the realm of dreams. But that changed in the 20th century, when science fiction began to become science fact. In 1945, a British science fiction writer named Arthur C. Clarke proposed a radical idea. What if we launched machines into orbit, placed them high enough to circle the Earth at the same speed it rotated, and used them to transmit signals across the globe? Most people thought it was fantasy, but in just over a decade, it became reality. Because in 1957, the world heard a sound that changed history. Beep, beep, beep. It was the signal from Sputnik, the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviet Union. A tiny metal sphere, just 23 inches wide, had entered Earth's orbit and made the space age real. The launch of Sputnik sent shockwaves around the world, not just politically, but technologically. The United States, caught off guard, responded with urgency. In 1958, it created NASA, and later that year, launched Explorer 1, its first satellite. Though small and primitive, it carried scientific instruments that discovered the Van Allen radiation belts, invisible zones of high-energy particles surrounding Earth. These early satellites weren't just machines in space. They were symbols of possibility. By the early 1960s, scientists began to understand the full potential of satellites, not just for science, but for communication, weather, navigation, and even spying. In 1962, the world took a giant leap with Telstar 1, the first active communications satellite. Built by Bell Labs and launched by NASA, Telstar transmitted the first live television images between the U.S. and Europe. People on both sides of the Atlantic watched the same broadcast at the same time for the first time in history. Suddenly, the world felt smaller. Messages flew faster. Events were shared globally, and the dream of a connected planet took shape. But this was only the beginning. Satellites were about to change everything, from how we fight wars to how we find our way home. In the decades that followed, satellites grew smarter, smaller, and more specialized. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union launched satellites designed for surveillance and intelligence gathering. High-resolution cameras captured images of missile silos, troop movements, and even the license plates on enemy vehicles from hundreds of miles above Earth. This ability to see everything without being seen redefined global security and diplomacy. At the same time, other satellites were watching the skies, not for enemies but for storms. In 1960, the U.S. launched Tyros 1, the first weather satellite. For the first time, meteorologists could observe cloud systems from space, spotting hurricanes, tracking storms, and predicting weather with new accuracy. Today, satellites help us forecast natural disasters, saving countless lives through early warnings. Then came navigation. In the 1970s, the U.S. Department of Defense began developing the Global Positioning System, GPS. Using a network of satellites orbiting Earth, GPS allowed receivers on the ground to determine their exact location, anywhere on the planet at any time. What began as a military project soon became a revolution in civilian life. Today, GPS powers your smartphone maps, guides planes and ships, tracks delivery trucks, and even helps farmers steer tractors with precision. But satellites weren't just changing how we moved, they were transforming how we connected. In the 1980s and 1990s, satellites became the silent infrastructure behind a new global network, the information age. Television networks used satellites to beam broadcasts across continents. Telephone calls that once required undersea cables now bounced through space. News events, wars, elections, the Olympics were shared with the world in real time. Then came the rise of the Internet. Although most Internet data travels through underground fiber optic cables, satellites play a crucial role in bringing connectivity to remote and rural areas, places where laying cables is too expensive or impossible. Countries with limited infrastructure suddenly had access to global information. As bandwidth improved, so did the potential. Satellite internet allowed researchers in Antarctica to send data, mountaineers to contact home, and people in isolated villages to go online for the first time. Meanwhile, new satellite systems were launched for Earth observation. These satellites didn't just take pretty pictures. They monitored deforestation, glacier loss, ocean currents, urban growth, and carbon emissions. They gave scientists a clear view of how the planet was changing and the data needed to respond. And above them all, space telescopes like the Hubble peered into the cosmos, sending back images of galaxies, nebula, and stars billions of light years away. Satellites were no longer just tools. They had become windows to Earth and beyond. In the 21st century, satellites entered a new era, faster, cheaper, and more abundant than ever before. Thanks to advances in miniaturization and commercial launch services, space was no longer the exclusive domain of governments. A new generation of companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and OneWeb began building and launching constellations of satellites, often numbering in the hundreds or thousands. These small satellites, known as CubeSats or nanosatellites, could be built for a fraction of the cost of older systems. Universities, startups, and even high schools began launching them for research, environmental monitoring, or tech experiments. But perhaps the most ambitious leap came from efforts to provide global internet coverage. Projects like Starlink by SpaceX aim to launch tens of thousands of low Earth orbit satellites to beam high-speed internet to every corner of the globe, from megacities to deserts to open oceans. The dream? A world where everyone is connected, no matter where they live. At the same time, satellites have become essential for disaster response. When earthquakes strike, wildfires rage, or floods devastate cities, satellites provide emergency teams with real-time maps, damage assessments, and communication links. Even agriculture has changed. Farmers now use satellite data to monitor crop health, water levels, and soil conditions, farming with precision from space. Satellites are no longer just looking down. They're interwoven into daily life, quietly powering the systems we depend on, often without even knowing it. Today, there are more than 8,000 active satellites orbiting Earth, and the number is growing every month. They orbit at different altitudes and speeds, serving different missions. Some circle close in low Earth orbit, LEO, passing overhead every 90 minutes. Others sit thousands of miles above in geostationary orbit, hovering over the same spot on Earth, ideal for TV and weather. This complex web of machines forms a digital nervous system around the planet. And it's not just Earth anymore. Satellites have been sent to orbit the Moon, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and beyond. They've mapped alien surfaces, studied atmospheres, searched for signs of life, and even delivered internet to Antarctica. Some have gone so far they'll drift forever into the stars, humanity's first messengers to the galaxy. But this growth has also brought challenges. Space is getting crowded. Thousands of satellites plus millions of pieces of space debris now circle our planet at incredible speeds. Even a bolt or scrap of metal can cause catastrophic damage in orbit. Experts warn of a possible Kessler syndrome, a chain reaction of collisions that could make space travel dangerous or even impossible. That's why scientists and space agencies are now working on satellite recycling, space cleanup missions, and strict orbital regulations. Still, despite the risks, one thing is certain. Satellites have changed how we live, think, move, and see the world, and they'll continue shaping our future in ways we're only beginning to imagine.